Back on the air, and this is Radio Entrepreneurs. Thank you very much. My name is Jeffrey Davis. I'm the host of the show, but being hosted for all these segments by the law firm of Tarlow, Breed, Hart, and Rogers and the Prudential Center. That means my co-host for this segment is the one, the only Mark Furman.
Hey, Jeffrey, great to be with you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And as you see, we have a full house today. We have Rich Hershen from Gray & Gray in the corner and Mark Z from Mark Z Legal Staffing. It's a full Radio Entrepreneurs palooza. Our next guest, Alastair Adam, co-CEO of Flatwood, correct?
Flatworld, yep.
Flatworld, you're right. I'm wrong. So tell us about Flatworld.
So we are looking to disrupt the college textbook market. That's a $5 billion market here in the U.S. And I think as anybody who's followed the news or who's had kids go through college would know, not only is the cost of tuition really, really high, but the cost of textbooks are out of control. Lots of people have come along and tried to change the market by developing new ways of learning. We think this is a pricing problem. This is like JetBlue or Southwest in the airline industry. The issue is textbooks are overpriced. They don't need to be that expensive. You can reduce the price, sell a whole lot more textbooks of high quality, and disrupt the market. So that's what we're doing.
Now, I've seen that in other industries over the last 20, 30 years, mostly in the food and garment industries where things are coming overseas. How do you disrupt the traditional chain of production to make it cheaper?
Well, you don't have to disrupt it that much, because what's happened is the market has consolidated. It's really essentially a duopoly, two big players in the market now. Number 2 and number 3 just announced that they were going to merge. And they've used that market power to just increase price. It's not about cost.
People it's like think pharmaceuticals.
That's a great analogy. People think it costs a lot of money to produce a textbook. Sure, you have to invest. You have to have a high-quality product and all the supplements that go with it to help the professor, because that's what a textbook's about. But it doesn't need to cost as much as it does. What's happened today is that only about 15% of students in the class actually buy a new textbook. Because when you've got textbooks that are $250,
is that what they cost?
That is what they cost.
It's not like when Mark went to school
and higher
$3.
Right. That's right. So thank you, Jeffrey. So what can you sell those for?
So our prices start $24.95.
Oh my God!
Up to $39.95.
I have to go back. I guess I was in shock. I made the joke. How could any textbook cost $250? If I was buying the full Webster, original Oxford dictionary, it wouldn't cost me that much.
Right. I don't know if you've flown to London. I come from the UK. 20 years ago, I did anyway. If you fly to London, where there's really one big carrier, British Airways,
right,
they will charge you $11,000-$12,000 for a business class seat.
Right.
That's the same length of flight as California from Boston.
Right.
Right. If you fly to California, it doesn't cost you that much because there's competition. So if there's no competition, there's pricing power. But what's happened is students are saying, I can't afford that. They're selecting professors and courses based on the price of the textbook being assigned. And they're saying, I'll use a used book, an old book. In some cases, I'll pirate a book online.
My daughter bought all used books when she went to school.
They shouldn't have to be forced to do that. If you drop the price in the same way that Southwest drops the price of an airline ticket, you fill the plane up or you fill the classroom, everybody in the classroom buys new, you actually make a lot of money. Now, the second place is modern publishing. We have the advantage as a newer entrant to this space of having a fully digital platform. And that's much, much more efficient. Standardizing, all the book covers and things like that really don't add value to the learning process. So we've sort of taken a fresh perspective on that, taken a lot of unnecessary cost out of the process, still have a high quality, peer-reviewed, authored by known authors and professors product, because you can't compromise on that. But it doesn't need to be at $200.
So, it's interesting. You're sort of the Virgin Airlines, for British Airlines.
Yeah, right.
Because we're using your British metaphor. What's your background that led you into this? So, have you always been disruptive?
Yeah, I've always been a disruptor. I tried to be. My co-CEO and I have worked together for over 20 years now. We started our own consulting firm focused on data, information, and publishing businesses, advising clients in that space. So in fact, the first project we ever worked together on was 21 years ago in this industry. So we have, over the years, I think I actually worked for most of the big publishers, the incumbents in this space. So we've sort of seen it from the other side of the table.
So how old is the company?
So it gets a little confusing. We started this business model in late 2016. We acquired assets and put the pieces together to build this disruptive model. And some of those assets came from a former Flatworld company because they built some great quality products, a great platform, and we retained the brand name because it had some good equity. That business was started back in 2007, but this business was in late 2016.
And what kind of traction are you getting?
Well, we just passed 1 million users, our millionth user. We're in 1,400 colleges across the U.S., so we're getting a lot of traction. We're not quite at triple-digit sales growth, but we're at very solid double-digit growth.
Are you getting resistance?
Not yet.
From like book manufacturers?
The other publishers.
I mean, you're cutting into their margins.
The other publishers, I'm sure, I know, are keeping a close eye on us. At this stage, I think they're busy sort of trying to ignore us, but that gets harder and harder as we take business.
So once you solve the textbook problem, maybe you can solve the cost of higher education problem.
Well, we've got a long road ahead of us. As I said, this is a $5 billion market. If you add in the used book and rental market, it's probably close to $8 billion just in the U.S. So we've got a long ways to go. So heads down and focused on this first. But that's another big challenge. I'm not sure that's one we're up for solving.
Curious what the price differential would be when people buy used books versus using you.
Yeah, so what happens with the used book is really a supply-constrained market, which is why the incumbents do everything they can to disrupt the supply of used. They keep flipping editions, updating editions, changing covers, moving things around, trying to force everybody to a digital-only offering so that there isn't a used supply. And then what happens with the student is they buy that new book and then they take it back at the end of the semester or the end of the year to trade it in. And they're kind of shocked at how little they get offered for that used book. Well, then that gets marked up again and sold. And what's amazing is those used books will trade for $90.
Wow.
Right. The student may only get 30 back, but then they get marked up again. They got to go through the whole chain again. And of course, in the digital world, there is no used. And so with this big push to digital, there is no used alternative, and therefore you're sort of forced to effectively buy a new book all over again.
Do you have competition, or are you the first, let's say, in this country to be doing this?
Well, we are the first to be doing this because one of the big barriers to entry and the reasons that other people haven't been able to get into this market is that it takes time to build a good list of high-quality peer-reviewed titles. You can't just ask a professor to drop everything and write a book. And even when they've done that, you've got to get it reviewed, you've got to get it all sort of processed and put out there. And then to be able to afford a large sales force, because we have a big sales force out there in the field going from professor to professor, you need to have a bunch of titles. Because if you just show up on campus and you've got one book and they say, I'm not teaching that course this semester, it's like, then what are you going to do, turn around and go home? So to build a title of, we have between 135 and 150 titles now, leading titles, takes time and it takes investment. And that has kept people out of the market. It makes it really hard to break in.
Have you tended to focus in on certain areas of expertise for books and then broaden out, or is it across the board?
No, we started, and a lot of the titles that we acquired were in those big intro courses, the entry-level courses where all the students are, right?
Right.
And we have a very strong presence in business, in those disciplines, but we aim to be a full-line publisher in all of these areas. But you're going to start where the biggest piece is and then work your way from there.
Very nice. For our listeners, we've been speaking with Alastair Adam, CEO of Flatworld. Got it right this time. And doing that with my co-host of Mark Furman from Tarlow, Breed, Hart & Rogers. Alastair, if somebody wants to find you at Flatworld, how would they do that?
So the easiest thing is to come to flatworld.com. Now, typically, that's where the professor will come, or they'll meet one of our sales reps. One of the other things that we do is we sell a lot of our volume direct to the student, so it doesn't get subjected to that bookstore markup. Bookstores take a book from from a publisher. They need to make their turn on it. They mark it up, but unfortunately, that just passes on more cost to the student. So they come to us. That's the cheapest place to buy the book.
Very good. Again, thank you for being on the show. Just because you're sort of disruptive to an industry and you're new to an industry, would you come back again sometime this year and tell us how you're doing?
We'd love to. Yeah,
Good.
Thank you very much
Our
for the
producer
opportunity.
will follow up with you on that. And I want to thank Mark also for hosting us. Check out Tarlow, Breed, Hart, and Rogers. And we are going to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages with more stories of entrepreneurship.